And if it's out of your control, how do you manage that? Take your time and think.
Well, I told them that they were going to get it, and that they're not going to get it when they think they're going to get it. They're going to get it within their deadline, but they can't move the deadline up 2 months. Not right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen.
So one of the thoughts that I'm hearing is that you're referring to a boundary, setting a boundary
Yes.
with people. So one of the times when you feel that things are out of your control is really setting a boundary with other
Yes.
people when they're moving up a deadline, example of 2 months, thinking, oh, this is I have to stay within areas within my control. That this is out of my control. How was I supposed to know that they were going to move the deadline up? You wouldn't. So it's really about talking about this boundary, and then it brings back to the topic of stress and the elements that we have: sleep, afraid, and pressure, which come from if a boundary is being violated. So one thought, that you can have is, I'm setting a boundary. This may not be I may not have control of this, but I have control of how I set this boundary.
Mm-hmm.
How would that work in a situation like Dragon Con?
So I did what they wanted already.
Mm-hmm.
And they are going to get it, because tomorrow is going to be a very, very busy day. I'm just going to get up very early and get it out very fast. But I need to rest right after that, because I don't think that I could keep up at this level all the time. And I did this for a very long time, and I don't want to stay that way.
Yeah, from what you're saying, you're talking about really setting a boundary and maintaining that level of balance, because we do have to take care of ourselves along with other people, so you can keep having aspects like money coming in, so you can keep having supply demand, so you can keep selling things, so you can maintain a business. And that doesn't happen unless you have balance.
Mm-hmm.
What are your current thoughts on balance?
Nothing is in balance right now. Everything's out of balance.
So you feel like, from what you're saying, that you feel you don't have any balance.
It's hard to do it. It's hard to maintain it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I swim in the afternoons, because usually during that time would be my peaceful time to think.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the one thing I do every day that would make me more peaceful, that I take time out just for that.
Yeah, so talking about this self-care, taking time for yourself, that's an element of balance. You have all the stressful work, and you also want to have this time for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So maintaining with the thoughts are out of your control, one way to manage it, at least I'm taking time for myself.
Some.
Mm-hmm. That's one. Why do you feel that you would need to take time for yourself in order to maintain balance?
Well, first of all, I have to work on my leg.
Mm-hmm.
So by exercising in the water, it makes it not hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of self-care right there. And then I'll be able to stand more when I work, because water is cold and it stops the swelling.
Mm-hmm. So that, therefore, would that reduce your level of stress?
Yes.
So that's a reason we need
Makes
self-care.
it easier to cut things at that point, because I can stand up.
Make it easier on your supply demand?
That is unpredictable, but I'm okay right now, because I have prepared with that. But with what's going on, when China said they were going to block everything around Taiwan, stop everything, yeah, that had me pretty nervous. Yes.
So you're hearing that things are out of your control. So what is one of the thoughts that comes to mind when China and Taiwan are blocking
I've
products?
got to come up with something else.
So you feel that it is on you.
It is on me.
Specifically. What about, why do you feel that coming up with this solution is on you specifically?
So I'm the one who's thinking in the business.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody else who's going to do this.
So you feel that the pressure is solely on you.
It is.
When we come back to this topic of stress, with this pressure, which is an element of stress. I want to ask you if you think that putting all that on you, if we think about it, these are nations, they're imposing taxes. And I want you to consider that you are one person against nations that have policies and all that. So that is an element, and you feel that you are solely responsible for competing against these nations. that must contribute to a lot of stress and pressure.
It's not just me. I think it's a lot of people who are feeling this right now, that they have to have some kind of backup plan, because if they're not going to let things come through, or if something comes late or something like that, what do you do?
Yeah, and what you're saying is a lot of people. Is this a sense of community that you're sensing with a lot of people?
I think in a lot of stores and galleries and everybody's having a problem with products, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we're so popular, because we really can make it and get it to places very fast and not have to worry about other things. But I'm doing the worrying to make it happen.
Yeah, so you're putting all this stress and worry on yourself. And there are other
I went to
factors.
Carvel, and even Carvel is having a problem with supply chain. They have them written right in front of the thing.
And there's a lot of pressure when there's supply and chain demand across globally.
Yeah.
And then one of these thoughts of things are out of my control. This is out of my hands. I can have control over this. So we go back to the topic of, at least I have self-care. At least I can control what I am able to. Even though across the world there are supply and demand areas, at least I control myself and my actions and what I've done.
I know that I'm not going to keep this up every day, but I'm going to push through in order to get it done, and then I'm going to rest.
Very nice. Yeah, and that's a good plan that you're hearing that element of balance, that I'm going to take a rest. I'm going to work on myself. And that is one way to maintain that balance, to reduce this topic of stress, so there's less, so you're not deprived of sleep, so you're not feeling afraid and you don't feel pressure, and therefore you can maintain this balance and continue to view yourself in this positive way, and therefore can control your thoughts, which is a lot of pressure and a lot of control that is in this current situation.
Well, we are managing.
Yes,
we are doing it.
Yes, you are.
We've always done it. It's just we're getting a little more creative in the thinking now.
Who is we?
Well, my husband. My husband will work with me on some things, but he'll help me with the shipping, and he'll do the packing lists and stuff like that, and wrapping.
Is it more of a we or more of an I?
I.
So, what pronoun should you be using more in this situation?
Well, I guess I could really be saying I.
Because you feel this sole responsibility on you to really think of that. So I know he could be supportive.
He is.
But you feel that you're the one who is really contributing.
The one doing it.
Talking about that balance is maybe seeing what he contributes as well to what you're working with. And maintaining that, at least if this is out of my control, at least I set a boundary, and at least I'm taking time for myself. At the very least we can do. At this point, we are going to have to end this session right now. But I would like to thank you for sharing and being open with me. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sitting for that. Now, I'd like to talk about my reflections and my assessment based on the session. I felt this was a good opening where the client began to discuss these internal issues that she was facing. It was not a breakthrough at this point because the topics didn't appear and the ideas did not appear to resonate, but it takes a while for ideals and ideologies to resonate with our clients. So that was expected, but it was really about getting exposure and gaining this insight into what the client is thinking and how the client views their situation. This was meant more as a cognitive behavioral therapy session, really challenging these ideals as seen by the I versus the we, which is something that as clinicians, we're training them to be their own therapists, to view themselves, to know what their thoughts are so that they can best help themselves, which is something that was pointed out towards the end of this, which is the I versus we pronoun. When the client was talking about my husband, we are doing this. And I was like, oh, who is we? To really distinguish themselves from what is happening. Some thoughts is about finding a balance, because in our thoughts, we have to find a balance between certain ideals, stress versus balance, which is a huge human conundrum of trying to find stress versus balance. And especially in working with a business and facing supply demand chains, there is definitely a need for maintaining a balance and maintaining a sense of normalcy throughout the chaos. As seen, there's a lot of market and supply demand issues throughout the world globally, as seen by Carvel, as seen by across the world, McDonald's, for example. There are supply demand changes globally, corporately, everywhere. And this is multiple faceted issue. And this can definitely contribute to the topic of stress. And certain elements of stress that were explored was talk of lack of sleep, feeling afraid, feeling pressure, and how this led to these feelings and not being in control and not feeling a balance and feeling fear and feeling overwhelmed and feeling overworked and not feeling a sense of community because because the client felt it's on me. I have to contribute to that. And it was about recognizing in cognitive behavioral therapy what someone's thoughts are and how to maintain control on that. As seen throughout, the positive regard was held by the Carl Rogers theories, and that was utilized throughout this session, is maintaining empathy and treating the client with respect and knowing the client knows themselves best, and that was something that was believed in. And it was also understood the client's strength, because that is very important to bring and understand the client's strengths and what a client does well and what a client can improve, but turning what their client can improve into a strength that the client can work towards, such as an area of improvement, understanding what thoughts I can have when I don't feel a balance. At least, the example, things are out of my control, but at least I can set boundaries and I can maintain self-care. And that was something that kept being reiterated from the therapist to the client in this case. And I felt this was a beginning of a good working relationship where the client did trust the therapist and did begin to build rapport with the therapist. And the therapist understood the language and the mannerisms of the client. And it was able to be understood that way. And the client was able to openly express how stress was affecting them and how stress was manifesting. And I think this was a good beginning point to express and explore these feelings as seen by cognitive behavioral therapy.